Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekend reading report. It's time for my weekend reading report, the thrill-packed program where I talked about all the exciting stuff I read during the previous week. And this week, I feel like I got back on track a little bit. I had a couple weeks there where it was rough, man, where I had no time to read. And this week was a little bit better, or this past week. I only read, though, I only finished one thing that counts for my 500 book challenge, and that's kind of a bummer, but hopefully next week will be better as far as that goes. Looks like it will be. But the big thing that I read this past week, and this is for Garbology, the fantastic reading event that's going on right now. We're smack down in the middle of trash at the moment. We're right in the middle of the trashy month. Maybe a little past the middle. Anyway, for this fantastic reading event, I read this. This is Garbology. This is Criminali's Garbology. Criminali presents Garbology, edited by Troy Tradeup. Troy Tradeup very kindly sent an ebook copy of this for me, and he offered to get me a physical copy. But I felt like, you know what? I want to support this endeavor. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to buy a physical copy. There is an exemption to the 500 book challenge where you can buy books if they are written or edited by your friends. And Criminali and Troy are both, well, they're both our pals, right, Roger? They're both friends of ours. And so I went ahead and bought this because I wanted to support them as much as possible. So I felt like, I should give this an actual real purchase. So I purchased a copy. Unfortunately, that means, even though I have an ebook copy, I kind of feel like that means I shouldn't count it for the 500 book challenge. But that's okay because it was great. And I really enjoyed reading this. So this is an anthology dreamed up by Criminali and Troy Tradeup. An anthology of trashy stories. Garbology, of course, is the month where we celebrate trashy fiction. Fiction that is not bad. We're not saying it's bad fiction. It's just looked down on by society. And so this anthology is a collection of stories that are all trashy. They're all very trashy. Lots of sex and violence in this volume. And it has a lot of stories written by booktubers who you might know. It's divided up into different fantastic sections. We've got Adults Only, Crime Doesn't Pay, Monster Mash, and Weird Menace, and my personal favorite, When Animals Attack. It has an Animals Attack section. And it's a fairly substantial volume, 452 pages long. And it's actually, I have to be honest, it's better than I thought it would be. It is a book with stories written by many writers who are amateur writers. Some people, their first published works of fiction are in this book. And so, you kind of go into it I kind of went into it knowing that, it might not be so great, but actually it's really, really good. The quality of the stories, frankly, surprised me. There's some really good stuff in here. There are amateur moments. I mean, you do see some of that in this anthology, just to be honest. But it's a lot of fun, and some of the stories are just really, really good. So I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of the volume. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of our booktuber friends wrote stories in this book. We've got Andrew Roebuck with Novelization of the Damned. Criminali actually wrote a story for this volume, which is really funny. It's a really entertaining story. So there's some good stuff in here. R. St. Clair has a story in here, and she always delivers. She always delivers the good stories. So there's some good stuff in here, like too many to mention. Uh, really. Uh, Gareth Howells, though, special mention to Gareth for his story Itch, which I really, really enjoyed, even though it kind of made me itch. I was itching during that story. So I read this throughout the week and really enjoyed it. So congratulations to Ollie and Troy Trade Up and everybody involved in writing the stories for this volume. I know it was a lot of hard work to put this together. And I think it's a pretty great achievement, you know. Garbology, which just started off as a regular reading event a few years ago, turned out to be the greatest reading event of all time. And then we have this fantastic book celebrating that reading event. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. You don't have to read it in August. It's trashy fiction, can be read at any time of the year. So I recommend this. It's just a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed this very much. So there is this Garbology. Of course, like I said, that because I purchased a copy to support the volume, I didn't count it for the 500 book challenge. I did finish a book for the 500 book challenge, and that would be book 172. 172. And that would be Conan. So I started this series of books early. I've talked about this probably was it the last video I made? I can't remember. It was a recent video. I did a Robert E. Howard show where I talked about Sumerian September and how for that event I'm reading the 12 volume set of Conan books that was edited by L. Sprague de Camp. And this was the only way we could read Conan for years and years, was this 12 volume set that has Robert E. Howard's fiction in there, mixed up scandalously with a bunch of stories written by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. Lynn Carter automatically makes this volume eligible for Garbology, by the way. And L. Sprague de Camp took some non-Conan stories and turned them into non-Conan Robert E. Howard stories, turned them into Conan stories. They took some fragments, stories that Robert E. Howard started, didn't really think enough of to finish, and laid aside. These fragments were later found and turned into full-length Conan stories. Outlines that Conan wrote for Conan stories that he never wrote, that they took that basic outline and they made stories of. So this set of books is not the way to encounter Conan for the first time. You really want to read the real thing, which is Robert E. Howard's original Conan stories, which are easily available now. But for a long time, this was it. And so I thought I would revisit these to give these a critical appraisal, because as has been pointed out to me, it has been years since I've read this set of books. I often criticize it, and I still criticize it because I don't believe you should have Robert E. Howard's fiction mixed up with pastiche fiction. But as a reading experience, how was this first initial volume in this series? It was pretty good, I have to say. It is uneven, as you would expect. There are Robert E. Howard stories in here of Conan. So for the Robert E. Howard stories, we have Tower of the Elephant, one of his best Conan stories. Rogues in the House, which is excellent. And The God and the Bull. So those are the only three pure Robert E. Howard stories in this volume. And they're all great stories. God and the Bull is probably the least of the Robert E. Howard stories that he wrote about Conan, but still pretty good. Well, probably not. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. But still pretty good story. And so, the Robert E. Howard stuff was great. But we also had some DeCamp and Carter stuff. So The Thing in the Crypt actually is the first story in this volume by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. And it's okay. It's not bad. It's a decent enough sword and sorcery Conan pastiche story. It was okay, but it was just okay. I think it's a story that could easily have been skipped, The way this series is set up is L. Spragg de Camp decided to take the Conan stories and make a saga out of them. Originally, they were not presented in the chronological order of Conan's life, deliberately, but in this series, that's what L. Spragg de Camp did. So the earliest story chronologically is The Thing in the Crypt, where Conan runs away from some wolves into a cave, finds a big dead guy on a throne holding a sword. He takes the sword. The big dead guy comes to life. Conan kills the dead guy again and runs away with his sword and kills some wolves. It's okay. It's not bad. It's okay. But then you follow that with the Tower of the Elephant, which is magnificent. And you could really see the difference in the quality between those two stories. But then the next non-Robert E. Howard story in here is The Hall of the Dead, which is based on an outline that Robert E. Howard wrote but never made into a story. L. Spragg de Camp took that outline, wrote a full story, and it's decent. It's a decent story. It does not read like Robert E. Howard. And I mean, as much as L. Spragg de Camp tries, and he does try, he doesn't quite give it, he can't give it that Robert E. Howard flair. You know, it feels a little artificial because of that, but it's not bad. It's okay. Then at the end of the book, we have two non-Robert E. Howard stories. We have The Hand of Nurgle, which isn't bad, actually, as far as how it's written. That's actually based on, I think, a fragment that Robert E. Howard started but didn't finish. It was finished by Lynn Carter. Lynn Carter does give it a fair amount of Robert E. Howard pastiche flair. The writing in this is entertaining. It's not bad. The only problem with this story is that Conan is pretty much unnecessary to the story. There's some good stuff at the beginning when Conan is fighting some supernatural demon creatures, and there was a big battle, and the first section of the story is pretty good. But by the end of it, the concluding section of the story, you realize Conan was not necessary. All Conan needed to do was get this magic jewel, which he just happened to find, to a place so that the magic jewel can turn into a being, so they could fight this other magic object, which also turns into a being. And so these two magical objects, beings, fight each other at the end. And Conan is just basically left standing there with some other guys saying, oh, look at that. There's a fight going on. I'll just hang out here. And so Conan was pretty much uninvolved with the end of the story, which kind of is like, why is this even here? And so, it was good up until the end when you realize this doesn't need to be a Conan story. This volume concludes with The City of Skulls by Lynn Carter and de Camp, which is genuinely entertaining. That was a good story, I have to say. The City of Skulls, that was good. Not as good as the Robert E. Howard stuff, but it was good. So overall, this is a decent volume. It's entertaining. I can see why people latched on to this series of books because, it's not bad. Not the way to present Conan, not the way to present Robert E. Howard's Conan for the first time. But as a reading experience, it was better than I thought it would be. And it's got this great cover by Frank Frazetta. That is magnificent. So this is the first volume in the series, which I started early. I'm hoping that in Sumerian September, I can get through the initial 12 books and maybe start on some of the Bantam pastiche novels. That would be awesome if I can get that far. But we'll see. It's going to be a busy September. But this is a good Garbology start to this series. The next book in the series is Conan of Samaria, another fantastic cover by Frazetta, and I will start this next week, probably. But I realized that I'm halfway through the month, and I never even started the book for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. And the pick for this month is The Purple Land by W.H. Hudson. The Purple Land by W.H. Hudson, which is not trashy. So it doesn't really fit with Garbaugust, but it is the August pick. Roger picked this for August, so I will be reading The Purple Land for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. It came in it came with a really nice slipcase. This is the nice slipcase that it came in. And I know very little about this. I don't hear much about this book at all anymore, even though at one time I guess it was considered kind of a classic. The only review of this I've ever seen is the video that Book Time with Ryan did a few years ago. I think he did that video a couple of years ago. I'll try to find it. If I could find that video from Book Time with Ryan, I'll link it down below because it was pretty good. And this sounds like a pretty good book. I just started it this morning, and so far I've read the first chapter, and the first chapter is good. So I have a feeling this is going to be a good book. I don't know that it'll be great, but it looks like it's going to be pretty good. So The Purple Land by W.H. Hudson. I should finish this no problem this week. I will tell you all about it on the next weekend reading report. So yeah, Roger's Cheap Old Book Club finally makes an appearance this month. Also, I have, of course, been reading the Fantastic Four. I'm reading every issue of the Fantastic Four from the initial run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961 all the way up through 1996 when it was canceled and immediately brought back with another one issue. But I'm reading the initial run, and I didn't read as much of the Fantastic Four this week as I intended to. I had hoped to finish this Epic Collection. This is the third Epic Collection collecting these issues. But I was reading too much Garbology stuff, so didn't get as far as I would like. And the next issue I have to read is issue 41, where inexplicably it looks like the Thing is going to betray the Fantastic Four. Can that be possible? The brutal betrayal of Ben Grimm. Say it isn't so, Ben. Don't betray the Fantastic Four. So this is magnificent. Fantastic Four, my favorite comic book from Marvel Comics ever. And I'm loving it. I'm loving reading all of this stuff again. I actually have never read every issue of that initial run of Fantastic Four. There's some chunks that I missed. So this is an interesting project for me. And here at the beginning, the Jack Kirby, Stan Lee stuff, just magnificent. So I should finish this, maybe not today, but certainly this week for sure. And I'm also hoping to get back to Edgar Rice Burroughs for my Read Every Book by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So I'm hoping by the end of the month to be able to read this. This is Tarzan the Untamed, the next book I have to read from Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I remember this being a really good book. You know, it's Tarzan. And here's Tarzan lost in the desert, having to fight off a buzzard that wants to eat Tarzan. You know, if you're an adventure hero, you have troubles like this. So Tarzan the Untamed, I'm hoping to get to this by the end of this month. So after I finish The Purple Land, I might go to Conan or I might go to this. We will see. We will see. That's all in the future, and that's all I have to say for today. I will catch you next time.